Question 1. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing concern regarding the timely acquisition of all necessary construction permits and approvals for upcoming China state construction engineering projects. In light of potential pressures to accelerate project timelines and manage immediate costs, which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical standards for commencing construction activities? Option A. Commence construction based on preliminary approvals and informal assurances from local officials, with the expectation that final permits will be secured later. Option B. Begin construction with all necessary permits except for one minor administrative approval, assuming it will be a formality to obtain later. Option C. Prioritize meeting the construction schedule by starting work with the understanding that permits can be obtained retroactively or that minor deviations are acceptable. Option D. Proceed with construction activities only after all required permits and approvals have been officially granted and documented by the relevant authorities. Correct answer is D. Proceed with construction activities only after all required permits and approvals have been officially granted and documented by the relevant authorities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a project with long-term compliance and ethical considerations. China State Construction Engineering operates within a specific regulatory environment that emphasizes adherence to national laws and industry standards. Misinterpreting or disregarding these requirements can lead to severe consequences, including legal penalties, reputational damage, and project delays. The pressure to meet deadlines and budget constraints can tempt individuals to take shortcuts, making robust ethical judgment and a clear understanding of regulatory obligations paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which prioritizes obtaining all necessary permits and approvals before commencing construction activities, aligns directly with the regulatory framework governing construction projects in China. This framework, as stipulated by laws such as the Law of the People's Republic of China on Urban Planning and various construction industry regulations, mandates that all projects must secure the requisite permits from relevant government authorities. This ensures that projects meet safety, environmental, and quality standards and are integrated into urban development plans. Adhering to this process demonstrates a commitment to legal compliance and responsible project management, safeguarding the company from legal repercussions and ensuring the project's legitimacy and long-term viability. It also upholds ethical principles by respecting the rule of law and protecting public interest. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with construction based on preliminary approvals while awaiting final permits. This is a regulatory failure because it violates the explicit requirement for full authorization before commencement. It exposes the company to penalties for illegal construction and could lead to orders to halt work, causing significant financial losses and project delays. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for established legal processes and a willingness to operate in a gray area, potentially compromising project integrity. Another incorrect approach is to rely on informal assurances from local officials that permits will be granted. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Informal assurances do not constitute legal authorization and are not legally binding. Relying on them bypasses the formal, documented approval process designed to ensure compliance and accountability. This approach is highly risky, as it leaves the project vulnerable to sudden regulatory intervention and can be interpreted as an attempt to circumvent established procedures, damaging the company's reputation for integrity. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize meeting the immediate construction schedule over obtaining all necessary permits, assuming permits can be retroactively obtained or that minor deviations are acceptable. This is a direct violation of Chinese construction law and regulations. It demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and a failure to understand the critical importance of the permitting process. Such an approach prioritizes short-term gains over long-term legal standing and project legitimacy, leading to potential fines, project suspension, and legal disputes. Ethically, it shows a lack of respect for the regulatory system and a disregard for the potential risks to public safety and environmental protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a thorough understanding of all applicable Chinese laws and regulations pertaining to construction permits and project commencement. This involves consulting legal counsel and relevant government agencies to clarify requirements. The next step is to integrate the permitting timeline into the overall project plan, ensuring that sufficient time is allocated for obtaining all necessary approvals. When faced with pressure to expedite, professionals must communicate the regulatory requirements and potential risks of noncompliance to all stakeholders, including project managers and senior leadership. The decision-making framework should always prioritize legal compliance and ethical conduct, even when faced with financial or schedule pressures. This involves a commitment to transparency, documentation, and adherence to established procedures. Question 2. Governance review demonstrates that a critical infrastructure project in China, managed by China State Construction Engineering, has commenced site preparation and foundation work without securing the mandatory Environmental Impact Assessment (IA) approval and the requisite land use permit. The project team is under significant pressure to meet aggressive construction deadlines and is considering proceeding with further construction phases while attempting to expedite the permit acquisition process through internal channels. What is the most appropriate course of action for the project management team to ensure regulatory compliance and mitigate risks? Option A. Immediately halt all construction activities until the Environmental Impact Assessment approval and land use permit are officially obtained and verified. Option B. Continue with construction as planned, prioritizing the aggressive deadlines and concurrently submit applications for the missing permits, hoping for retroactive approval. Option C. Initiate discussions with local government officials to seek an informal waiver or expedited processing of the permits, emphasizing the project's economic importance. Option D. Proceed with construction, focusing on non-sensitive areas, and only address the permit issues if directly questioned by regulatory bodies. The correct answer is A. Immediately halt all construction activities until the Environmental Impact Assessment approval and land use permit are officially obtained and verified. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the complex interplay between project timelines, cost pressures, and the imperative of adhering to China's regulatory framework for construction projects, specifically concerning environmental impact assessments and land use permits. The pressure to expedite construction can lead to shortcuts that bypass crucial compliance steps, risking significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and project delays if discovered. The correct approach, which involves pausing construction to rectify the missing environmental permit and re-engaging with local authorities, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of regulatory compliance mandated by Chinese law, which prioritizes environmental protection and lawful land acquisition before commencing significant construction activities. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of regulations such as the Environmental Impact Assessment Law of the People's Republic of China and relevant land administration laws. By proactively addressing the compliance gap, the project team demonstrates a commitment to lawful operations, risk mitigation, and sustainable development, thereby safeguarding the company's long-term interests and its reputation as a responsible corporate citizen. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with construction while attempting to retroactively obtain the permit is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates Chinese environmental and land use regulations, which require permits to be secured prior to commencement. Such a decision would expose the company to severe penalties, including fines, orders to cease construction, and potentially the demolition of unauthorized structures. Ethically, it represents a disregard for the rule of law and environmental stewardship. Another incorrect approach, which is to proceed with construction and only address the permit issue if questioned by authorities, is equally flawed. This passive approach relies on chance and demonstrates a lack of due diligence and proactive compliance. It creates a significant risk of discovery, leading to the aforementioned penalties and reputational damage. It also signals a culture of compliance by necessity, rather than a commitment to inherent regulatory adherence. Finally, an approach that involves lobbying local officials to overlook the missing permit without rectifying the underlying compliance issue is also professionally unsound. While understanding local dynamics is important, attempting to circumvent legal requirements through undue influence is unethical and potentially illegal. It undermines the integrity of the regulatory process and can lead to severe repercussions if such practices are exposed. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the applicable Chinese regulatory framework, including environmental protection laws, land use regulations, and construction permitting processes. When a compliance gap is identified, the immediate priority must be to halt any activities that require the missing authorization. The next step is to engage transparently and proactively with the relevant authorities to understand the requirements for obtaining the permit and to implement the necessary corrective actions. This approach prioritizes lawful conduct, risk management, and long-term sustainability over short-term expediency. Question 3. The control framework reveals that China State Construction Engineering is planning a new infrastructure project in a region with sensitive ecological zones. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with China's environmental protection laws and minimizes potential negative impacts? Option A. Rely on the environmental permits obtained for previous, similar projects, assuming the new site will have comparable environmental characteristics. Option B. Conduct a preliminary environmental screening to identify major potential issues, and then proceed with detailed design based on general industry best practices. Option C. Commission a comprehensive environmental impact assessment, IA, that thoroughly analyzes potential impacts on air, water, soil, biodiversity, and local communities, and proposes specific mitigation and monitoring plans in accordance with Chinese regulations. Option D. Delegate the entire environmental impact assessment process to the project's primary contractor without direct oversight from China State Construction Engineering's internal environmental compliance team. The correct answer is B. Conduct a preliminary environmental screening to identify major potential issues and then proceed with detailed design based on general industry best practices. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of how to assess the potential impact of a new project on existing environmental regulations and the company's compliance obligations. China State Construction Engineering operates within a stringent regulatory environment where environmental protection is a key focus. Failure to adequately assess the impact can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and project delays. The challenge lies in identifying all relevant environmental factors, quantifying their potential impact, and proposing effective mitigation strategies within the framework of Chinese environmental laws and regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive environmental impact assessment, IA, that adheres to the principles and procedures outlined in China's environmental protection law and related regulations on EIA. This process necessitates identifying potential environmental risks, evaluating their significance, and developing specific mitigation and monitoring plans. It requires engaging with relevant environmental authorities, consulting with experts, and considering the concerns of stakeholders. This approach ensures that the project is designed and implemented in a manner that minimizes adverse environmental effects and complies with all legal requirements, thereby safeguarding the company's long-term sustainability and reputation. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial review of environmental regulations without a detailed site-specific assessment. This fails to identify potential localized impacts or specific compliance requirements unique to the project's location, violating the spirit and letter of China's EIA laws, which mandate thoroughness. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on historical data from similar projects without considering the unique environmental context of the new site. This overlooks potential novel risks or changes in regulatory interpretation, leading to an incomplete and potentially non-compliant assessment. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings over a robust impact assessment, opting for minimal environmental controls. This directly contravenes the precautionary principle embedded in Chinese environmental law and could result in significant future liabilities and penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic, risk-based approach to impact assessment. This involves 1. Clearly defining the project scope and its potential interactions with the environment. 2. Identifying all applicable Chinese environmental laws, regulations, and standards. 3. Conducting a thorough baseline study of the existing environmental conditions. 4. Identifying and evaluating potential environmental impacts, both positive and negative. 5. Developing appropriate mitigation and enhancement measures. 6. Establishing a robust monitoring and management plan. 7. engaging with regulatory bodies and stakeholders throughout the process. This structured methodology ensures compliance, minimizes risks, and promotes sustainable development. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal a minor deviation in the concrete mix consistency as specific section of a foundation pour. While not immediately apparent as a critical structural flaw, the project manager is concerned about potential long-term implications. What is the most appropriate next step to manage this situation in accordance with China's construction quality and safety regulations? Option A. Immediately halt all further concrete pouring and order a complete remix of all concrete batches used to date to ensure absolute consistency. Option B. Document the deviation but proceed with the project as planned, assuming the deviation is within acceptable tolerances for non-critical elements. Option C. Implement a minor adjustment to the curing process for the affected section without further investigation into the cause or potential impact of the mix inconsistency. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the potential impact of the deviation on structural integrity, safety, and compliance, and then implement corrective actions based on the assessment's findings. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the potential impact of the deviation on structural integrity, safety, and compliance, and then implement corrective actions based on the assessment's findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the identified quality control issue, while seemingly minor, could have significant downstream impacts on project safety, structural integrity, and compliance with China's construction regulations. The pressure to maintain project timelines and budgets can create a conflict with the imperative to address quality defects thoroughly. Professional judgment is required to balance these competing demands while upholding the highest standards of construction practice and regulatory adherence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment that prioritizes the severity and likelihood of potential negative outcomes arising from the quality control lapse. This aligns with the principles embedded in China's construction quality laws and regulations, which mandate proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of risks to ensure project safety and quality. A thorough risk assessment allows for the allocation of appropriate resources and the implementation of targeted corrective actions, thereby preventing more significant problems and potential regulatory noncompliance. This approach demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and responsible project management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately proceeding with corrective actions without a formal risk assessment. This is professionally unacceptable because it may lead to an overallocation of resources to minor issues or, conversely, an underestimation of the true risk, potentially leaving critical vulnerabilities unaddressed. It bypasses the structured decision-making process mandated by quality management principles and regulatory expectations for risk mitigation. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the issue as insignificant and proceed without any corrective action. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. It directly contravenes China's construction quality laws that require all identified defects to be addressed. Such an approach disregards the potential for cumulative impact and could lead to serious safety hazards, structural failures, and significant legal repercussions, including fines and project suspension. A third incorrect approach is to implement a superficial fix without investigating the root cause. This is also professionally unacceptable, as it fails to address the underlying systemic issues that led to the quality lapse. Without understanding the root cause, similar defects are likely to recur, undermining the effectiveness of quality control measures and potentially leading to more serious consequences down the line. It represents a failure to learn from mistakes and improve processes, which is a core tenet of effective risk management and regulatory compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework. This involves 1. Identifying the quality control issue. 2. Analyzing the potential risks associated with the issue, e.g., safety, structural integrity, cost, schedule, reputation. 3. Evaluating the likelihood and impact of each risk. 4. Prioritizing risks based on their severity. 5. Developing and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. 6. Monitoring the effectiveness of these strategies. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, resources are used efficiently, and regulatory requirements are met, thereby safeguarding the project and the company's reputation. Question 5. The performance metrics show a consistent shortfall in the availability of certified structural welders for the critical foundation phase of a major infrastructure project, potentially impacting adherence to the approved construction schedule and quality benchmarks. Option A. Expedite the hiring of any available individuals with basic welding experience, prioritizing speed over formal certification and background checks to fill the immediate gap. Option B. Initiate an immediate review of the labor plan and explore all approved channels for sourcing additional qualified welders, including potential overtime for existing staff or formal recruitment processes, while ensuring all new hires meet stringent safety and certification requirements. Option C. Temporarily assign general laborers to welding tasks, assuming they can be quickly trained on-site to meet the immediate demand and keep the project on schedule. Option D. Continue with the current workforce, assuming the project schedule can be adjusted later to accommodate the welding backlog without impacting the overall completion date. The correct answer is B. Initiate an immediate review of the labor plan and explore all approved channels for sourcing additional qualified welders, including potential overtime for existing staff or formal recruitment processes, while ensuring all new hires meet stringent safety and certification requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large-scale construction projects: the discrepancy between planned resource allocation and actual site requirements, particularly concerning specialized labor. The performance metrics indicating a shortfall in skilled welders for critical structural components highlights a potential bottleneck that could impact project timelines, quality, and safety. The professional challenge lies in balancing immediate project needs with contractual obligations, regulatory compliance, and the long-term implications of resource management. It requires a proactive and strategic approach rather than a reactive one. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the project's labor plan, identifying the root cause of the welder shortage, e.g., underestimation, unexpected attrition, increased scope. Subsequently, it necessitates engaging with the project management team and relevant stakeholders to explore authorized avenues for augmenting the workforce. This could include seeking approval for overtime, reallocating resources from less critical areas if feasible, or initiating a formal process to onboard additional qualified welders through approved recruitment channels or subcontracting, ensuring all new personnel meet the stringent qualification and safety standards mandated by China State Construction Engineering's internal policies and relevant national construction regulations. This approach prioritizes adherence to project plans, contractual terms, and regulatory compliance while proactively addressing the performance gap. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to proceed with less qualified or unqualified personnel to meet immediate deadlines. This directly violates national construction safety regulations and internal quality control standards, posing significant risks to structural integrity and worker safety, which could lead to severe penalties, project delays, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the performance metrics and hope the issue resolves itself. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and proactive management, potentially leading to critical project delays, cost overruns, and a failure to meet contractual obligations, all of which are unacceptable under standard project management practices and could be viewed as a breach of duty. A third incorrect approach would be to unilaterally hire additional personnel without proper vetting or adherence to the company's procurement and HR policies. This could result in the engagement of individuals who do not meet the required skill sets or safety certifications, or even violate labor laws, leading to legal complications and compromising project quality. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first activate their project management framework. This involves data analysis, performance metrics, root cause identification, and risk assessment. The next step is to consult the project plan, contract, and relevant company policies and national regulations. Communication and collaboration with the project team, HR, procurement, and legal departments are crucial. Decision-making should be guided by a hierarchy of priorities: safety, regulatory compliance, contractual obligations, quality, and then cost and schedule. A structured approach ensures that solutions are not only effective in addressing the immediate problem, but also sustainable and compliant with all applicable standards. Question 6. System analysis indicates that China State Construction Engineering is considering implementing enhanced digital monitoring of employee activities to improve operational efficiency and security. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory frameworks, internal policies, and ethical considerations for employee data handling within China? Option A. Implement a comprehensive system to collect and review all digital communications and online activities of employees, with a general justification of improving overall productivity and security, without explicit prior notification to employees about the scope of monitoring. Option B. Utilize employee performance data collected for appraisal purposes to investigate unrelated personal matters or minor policy deviations that do not impact core job functions, without informing the employee of the expanded data usage. Option C. Develop clear documented policies outlining the specific types of employee digital activities that may be monitored, the legitimate business purposes for such monitoring, e.g., cybersecurity, performance assessment, and communicate these policies transparently to all employees, obtaining consent where legally required. Option D. Conduct informal, periodic checks of employee computer usage and email content based on the discretion of immediate supervisors, without a formal policy or notification process. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive system to collect and review all digital communications and online activities of employees, with a general justification of improving overall productivity and security, without explicit prior notification to employees about the scope of monitoring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the ethical conduct and compliance obligations of employees within China State Construction Engineering. The core difficulty lies in balancing the company's need for information with the individual employee's right to privacy and the potential for misuse of sensitive data. Navigating this requires a deep understanding of internal company policies, relevant Chinese labor laws, and ethical considerations regarding data handling and employee monitoring. The potential for misinterpretation or overreach in data collection necessitates a cautious and principled approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a transparent and policy-driven method for data collection, aligning with the principles of informed consent and legitimate business interest, as likely stipulated by China State Construction Engineering's internal guidelines and relevant Chinese regulations concerning employee data. This approach ensures that any monitoring or data gathering is conducted with clear justification, communicated to employees, and respects their privacy rights within the bounds of legal and company policy. It upholds ethical standards by preventing arbitrary or intrusive surveillance and focuses on data necessary for performance evaluation or security, thereby fostering trust and compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves broadly collecting all available digital communications without a specific, documented business justification. This violates principles of data minimization and proportionality, potentially infringing on employee privacy rights and contravening Chinese data protection regulations that require a lawful basis for data processing. Such indiscriminate collection can also lead to the accumulation of irrelevant or sensitive personal information, increasing the risk of breaches and misuse. Another incorrect approach is to rely on informal, ad hoc methods of monitoring employee activity without clear guidelines or employee notification. This lacks transparency and can create an environment of distrust. It also fails to establish a defensible basis for data collection, making it vulnerable to legal challenges and ethical scrutiny. Furthermore, it bypasses established internal control mechanisms designed to ensure compliance and fairness. A third incorrect approach is to use collected data for purposes unrelated to the initial stated justification, such as personal curiosity or to identify minor infractions for disciplinary action outside of established performance management processes. This constitutes a misuse of data, a breach of trust, and a violation of ethical data handling practices. It also likely contravenes specific provisions within Chinese labor law and company policy regarding the appropriate use of employee information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, legality, and ethical considerations. This involves 1. Clearly defining the legitimate business purpose for any data collection. 2. consulting and adhering strictly to China State Construction Engineering's internal policies and relevant Chinese laws and regulations governing employee data and monitoring. 3. Ensuring that employees are informed about what data is being collected, why, and how it will be used. 4. Implementing data collection methods that are proportionate to the stated purpose and minimize intrusion. 5. Establishing clear procedures for data storage, access, and retention, and ensuring data is used solely for its intended purpose. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating policies and practices to remain compliant with evolving legal and ethical standards. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a major infrastructure project undertaken by China State Construction Engineering is facing significant pressure to accelerate its construction timeline. However, preliminary site investigations suggest potential ecological sensitivities that may require a formal environmental impact assessment, IA, under Chinese law. Which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional best practice in this scenario? Option A. Initiate construction immediately to meet the accelerated timeline, with plans to conduct the EIA and seek retrospective approval if necessary. Option B. Halt all construction activities until a comprehensive, independent EIA is completed and officially approved by the relevant environmental protection bureaus. Option C. Proceed with construction while conducting internal environmental reviews, deferring formal submission to environmental protection bureaus until later in the project. Option D. Commence construction on non-sensitive areas, while awaiting preliminary discussions with environmental protection bureaus regarding the EIA process for the sensitive zones. The correct answer is A. Initiate construction immediately to meet the accelerated timeline, with plans to conduct the EIA and seek retrospective approval if necessary. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between achieving project timelines and ensuring adherence to regulatory compliance, particularly concerning environmental impact assessments. China State Construction Engineering, operating within the Chinese regulatory framework, must balance aggressive project delivery with its legal and ethical obligations to protect the environment. The pressure to expedite construction can lead to shortcuts that bypass crucial environmental review processes, creating significant legal, reputational, and operational risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with relevant environmental protection bureaus and conducting thorough, independent environmental impact assessments, IA, before commencing any significant construction activities. This aligns with the principles of China's environmental protection law and its associated regulations, which mandate EIAs for construction projects that may cause pollution or ecological damage. By prioritizing these assessments, the company demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance, responsible corporate citizenship, and sustainable development, thereby mitigating future risks and ensuring long-term project viability. This approach reflects best professional practice by embedding environmental stewardship into the project lifecycle from its inception. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with construction without a completed EIA, even if preliminary discussions have occurred, constitutes a direct violation of China's environmental protection law. This failure to obtain necessary permits and approvals before commencing work is a serious regulatory infraction, potentially leading to substantial fines, project suspension, and legal action. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for environmental protection and public health. Relying solely on internal assessments without independent verification or submission to the relevant environmental authorities is also a regulatory failure. Chinese environmental laws require official approval of EIAs by designated government bodies. Internal assessments, while useful for project planning, do not substitute for this mandatory governmental review and approval process. This approach risks misrepresenting the environmental impact and bypassing critical oversight. Delaying the EIA process until after construction has begun or attempting to retroactively obtain approval is a significant procedural and regulatory failure. This not only violates the law but also creates a difficult situation where mitigation measures may be more costly and less effective, and the project could face severe penalties or even demolition orders. It signals a lack of foresight and a reactive, rather than proactive, approach to compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding all applicable Chinese environmental laws and regulations relevant to the project. 2. Integrating environmental impact assessment requirements into the project planning and scheduling from the earliest stages. 3. Allocating sufficient resources and time for comprehensive and independent EIAs. 4. Establishing clear communication channels with environmental regulatory bodies to ensure transparency and timely approvals. 5. Implementing a robust internal compliance monitoring system to track progress and identify potential issues early. When faced with pressure to expedite, professionals must advocate for adherence to legal requirements, clearly articulating the severe consequences of noncompliance. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a proactive and adaptive approach to project execution. Considering the significant geopolitical shifts and economic uncertainties impacting international markets, how should China State Construction Engineering best revise its long-term strategic plan for a major overseas infrastructure project that was initially developed under more stable conditions? Option A. Conduct a thorough reassessment of the project's feasibility and strategic objectives, incorporating the latest geopolitical and economic intelligence, and develop revised execution strategies and contingency plans. Option B. Delegate the entire revision process to external consultants, accepting their recommendations without significant internal validation or integration into the company's core strategy. Option C. Implement minor, reactive adjustments to the plan as immediate challenges arise, without undertaking a comprehensive review of the overall strategic direction. Option D. Continue with the original strategic plan, assuming that market conditions will eventually revert to their previous state, and focus on operational efficiencies to absorb potential cost increases. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough reassessment of the project's feasibility and strategic objectives, incorporating the latest geopolitical and economic intelligence, and develop revised execution strategies and contingency plans. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large-scale construction projects where the initial strategic plan, developed with optimistic assumptions, encounters unforeseen geopolitical and economic shifts. The challenge lies in balancing the need for project continuity and stakeholder confidence with the imperative to adapt to a significantly altered operating environment. The pressure to maintain the original timeline and budget, despite these external shocks, can lead to decisions that compromise long-term viability or ethical standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves a comprehensive reassessment of the strategic plan based on the new geopolitical and economic realities, represents best professional practice. This aligns with principles of prudent project management and corporate governance, emphasizing adaptability and risk mitigation. Specifically, within the context of China State Construction Engineering's operational framework, this approach would be guided by internal risk management policies and potentially by directives from regulatory bodies like the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, or the Ministry of Commerce, MOFCOM, concerning overseas investments and project execution under changing international conditions. It prioritizes informed decision-making over blind adherence to outdated plans, ensuring the project's long-term sustainability and compliance with evolving national economic strategies. Correct approach is analysis, an approach that prioritizes maintaining the original strategic plan without significant adaptation, despite clear evidence of external disruptions, fails to meet professional standards. This could lead to resource misallocation, increased financial losses, and potential breaches of contractual obligations due to an inability to deliver as originally planned. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and foresight. From a regulatory perspective, it could be seen as a failure to manage risks effectively, potentially violating guidelines related to prudent financial management and project oversight. Another incorrect approach, which involves making ad hoc adjustments without a systematic reassessment, is also professionally unsound. This reactive strategy can lead to fragmented decision-making, conflicting objectives, and a lack of clear direction, further exacerbating the project's challenges. It undermines the integrity of the strategic planning process and can result in unintended consequences that are more difficult to rectify. A third incorrect approach, which involves solely relying on external consultants without internal validation and strategic integration, bypasses crucial internal expertise and accountability. While consultants can provide valuable insights, the ultimate responsibility for strategic direction rests with the company's leadership. Failing to integrate external advice into a cohesive internal strategy can lead to misaligned actions and a loss of control over the project's direction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with recognizing and validating the impact of external changes. This involves gathering comprehensive data, conducting thorough risk assessments, and engaging relevant internal and external stakeholders. The next step is to evaluate various strategic options, considering their feasibility, impact on project objectives, and alignment with regulatory and ethical requirements. Finally, the chosen strategy should be clearly communicated, implemented, and continuously monitored, with mechanisms for further adaptation as circumstances evolve. This iterative process ensures that strategic planning remains a dynamic tool for navigating complex environments. Question 9. Market research demonstrates that the successful and sustainable development of large-scale infrastructure projects in China is increasingly dependent on stringent adherence to environmental protection and construction safety regulations. China State Construction Engineering is undertaking a significant new construction project. During the initial site preparation phase, it is discovered that certain excavation activities may impact a nearby wetland area, which is a sensitive ecological zone. The project team is under pressure to meet aggressive construction timelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for China State Construction Engineering to ensure regulatory compliance and responsible project execution? Option A. Expedite the excavation process to complete the work in the wetland area quickly, minimizing the duration of potential disturbance, and then focus on remediation efforts afterward. Option B. Delegate the responsibility for managing the wetland impact solely to the excavation subcontractor, trusting their experience to handle the situation without direct oversight from China State Construction Engineering. Option C. Immediately halt excavation activities in the vicinity of the wetland and initiate a detailed review of the project's environmental impact assessment (IA) report and relevant sections of the PRC Environmental Protection Law and PRC Construction Law to determine the precise regulatory requirements and mitigation strategies. Subsequently, consult with environmental experts and relevant government agencies to develop and implement appropriate protective measures before resuming any potentially impactful work. Option D. Proceed with the excavation as planned, assuming that standard construction practices will adequately mitigate any minor environmental disturbances and address any potential issues if they arise later in the project. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt excavation activities in the vicinity of the wetland and initiate a detailed review of the project's environmental impact assessment (IA) report and relevant sections of the PRC Environmental Protection Law and PRC Construction Law to determine the precise regulatory requirements and mitigation strategies. Subsequently, consult with environmental experts and relevant government agencies to develop and implement appropriate protective measures before resuming any potentially impactful work. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large construction projects where multiple stakeholders, including government agencies, subcontractors, and the main contractor, China State Construction Engineering, have overlapping responsibilities and information flows. Ensuring compliance with China's regulatory framework for construction projects, particularly concerning environmental protection and safety standards, requires meticulous attention to detail and proactive communication. The challenge lies in navigating potential conflicts between project timelines, cost pressures, and the absolute necessity of adhering to stringent environmental regulations, which are increasingly emphasized in China's development policies. Misinterpreting or overlooking specific clauses within the relevant environmental protection laws and construction safety regulations can lead to significant legal repercussions, project delays, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Environmental Impact Assessment (IA) report and the relevant provisions of the PRC Environmental Protection Law and the PRC Construction Law. This approach prioritizes understanding the specific environmental mitigation measures mandated by the EIA and ensuring that all construction activities, particularly those involving potential pollutant discharge or habitat disturbance, are conducted in strict accordance with these requirements and the broader legal framework. It also necessitates proactive engagement with environmental monitoring agencies to confirm compliance and address any emerging issues before they escalate. This represents best professional practice because it demonstrates a commitment to regulatory adherence, environmental stewardship, and risk mitigation, aligning with China's national goals for sustainable development and responsible construction. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with construction activities that have potential environmental impacts without a finalized and approved EIA, or by making assumptions about compliance based on past projects. This is a direct violation of the PRC Environmental Protection Law, which mandates EIA approval before project commencement for projects with potential environmental impacts. It demonstrates a disregard for legal due diligence and exposes the company to severe penalties, including fines and project suspension. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of construction over adherence to the specified environmental mitigation measures outlined in the EIA, such as inadequate waste management or uncontrolled discharge of wastewater. This violates both the PRC Environmental Protection Law and potentially specific local environmental regulations, as well as the principles of responsible construction. It shows a failure to integrate environmental considerations into project execution, leading to potential pollution incidents and legal liabilities. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on subcontractor compliance without independent verification or oversight from China State Construction Engineering. While subcontractors have their own responsibilities, the main contractor retains ultimate accountability for overall project compliance with national laws and regulations. This approach demonstrates a failure in project management and oversight, potentially leading to undetected noncompliance and associated legal and reputational risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and systematic approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding all applicable laws, regulations, and project-specific requirements, like EIA reports, before commencing work. 2. Establishing clear internal procedures and responsibilities for compliance monitoring and reporting. 3. Implementing robust training programs for all personnel, including subcontractors, on relevant regulatory obligations. 4. Maintaining open and transparent communication channels with regulatory authorities and stakeholders. 5. Conducting regular audits and inspections to ensure ongoing adherence and to identify and rectify any deviations promptly. This structured approach minimizes risks and ensures that projects are executed in a legally sound and ethically responsible manner. Question 10. Compliance review shows that China State Construction Engineering is preparing a bid for a significant new administrative center project. During the pre-bid phase, a key project manager, under pressure to secure this high-profile contract, considers discreetly sharing preliminary cost estimates with the client's representative, ostensibly to ensure alignment with the client's budget expectations, while also attending industry events where competitors are present and considering probing them for insights into their bidding strategies. Which of the following approaches best upholds regulatory compliance and professional ethics in this scenario? Option A. Focus all efforts on developing the most aggressive bid price to win the contract, regardless of whether all tender requirements are fully met, and use any informal interactions with competitors to gather intelligence on their pricing. Option B. Strictly adhere to the tender documents and all applicable Chinese laws and regulations governing public bidding, meticulously documenting all official communications with the client and refraining from any discussions about pricing or strategy with competitors. Option C. Share preliminary cost estimates with the client's representative to demonstrate proactive engagement and understanding of their budget, and subtly inquire about competitors' potential approaches at industry events to gauge the competitive landscape. Option D. Engage in informal discussions with the client's representative to understand their ideal project outcome and subtly hint at potential cost savings if certain specifications are adjusted, while also seeking to understand competitors' general market positioning at industry events. Correct answer is B. Strictly adhere to the tender documents and all applicable Chinese laws and regulations governing public bidding, meticulously documenting all official communications with the client and refraining from any discussions about pricing or strategy with competitors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to secure a significant project and the imperative to adhere to ethical procurement practices and relevant Chinese regulations governing public bidding and construction contracts. The pressure to win the bid, especially for a high-profile project like the new administrative center, can lead to shortcuts or questionable tactics. Careful judgment is required to navigate these pressures while upholding integrity and legal compliance. A correct approach, which involves meticulously documenting all interactions with the client and potential competitors, and strictly adhering to the bidding process as outlined in the tender documents and relevant Chinese laws, such as the Tendering and Bidding Law of the People's Republic of China, represents best professional practice. This ensures transparency, fairness, and equal opportunity for all bidders, thereby preventing any perception or reality of unfair advantage. It aligns with the ethical principles of integrity, honesty, and professional conduct expected in competitive bidding environments, and avoids any violation of regulations designed to prevent corruption and ensure a level playing field. An incorrect approach that involves discreetly sharing preliminary cost estimates with the client, even if framed as seeking clarification, constitutes a serious regulatory and ethical failure. This action can be interpreted as providing insider information, potentially influencing the bidding process unfairly and violating the principles of confidentiality and fair competition mandated by Chinese bidding laws. Such an action could lead to disqualification, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, such as subtly probing competitors for their bidding strategies during informal networking events, is also professionally unacceptable. This constitutes an attempt to gain an unfair advantage through unethical means, undermining the integrity of the bidding process. It violates the spirit of fair competition and could be seen as industrial espionage or collusion, which are strictly prohibited under Chinese law and ethical guidelines. A third incorrect approach, which is to focus solely on winning the bid by any means necessary, disregarding the detailed requirements and evaluation criteria in the tender documents, is a fundamental failure in professional due diligence and ethical conduct. This approach prioritizes outcome over process and integrity, leading to potential noncompliance with contractual obligations and regulatory frameworks, and ultimately jeopardizing the company's long-term reputation and legal standing. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, including the tendering and bidding law and any specific project-related guidelines. Professionals must prioritize ethical conduct, ensuring all actions are transparent, fair, and compliant. This involves thorough preparation, diligent adherence to established procedures, maintaining open and honest communication within legal and ethical boundaries, and seeking guidance from legal or compliance departments when in doubt. The ultimate goal is to win business through merit and fair competition, not through unethical or illegal means. Question 11. The audit findings indicate that a construction site managed by China State Construction Engineering has been discharging wastewater exceeding permissible levels for suspended solids into a nearby river, potentially impacting aquatic life and downstream water quality. The project manager is under significant pressure to meet a critical construction deadline. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the project manager to take in response to these audit findings? Option A. Continue the wastewater discharge while initiating a review of the treatment process, with the aim of making adjustments to meet compliance standards before the next scheduled inspection. Option B. Escalate the issue to the head office for guidance, while allowing the wastewater discharge to continue to avoid project delays, and await their decision on how to proceed. Option C. Immediately halt the discharge of wastewater until the cause of the elevated suspended solids is identified and rectified, and initiate a thorough investigation into the source and contributing factors. Option D. Instruct the site supervisor to implement minor adjustments to the wastewater treatment system and document these changes as corrective actions, without a full investigation into the root cause. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt the discharge of wastewater until the cause of the elevated suspended solids is identified and rectified, and initiate a thorough investigation into the source and contributing factors. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the need for timely project completion and the imperative to adhere to strict environmental protection regulations. China state construction engineering operates within a regulatory environment that places significant emphasis on environmental compliance, especially for large-scale infrastructure projects. The pressure to meet deadlines, often driven by commercial interests and stakeholder expectations, can create a temptation to overlook or minimize environmental concerns. The auditor's findings highlight a potential gap between stated environmental policies and actual site practices, requiring a nuanced judgment call that balances project objectives with legal and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves immediately halting the noncompliant activity and initiating a thorough investigation to understand the root cause and implement corrective actions, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of environmental stewardship and corporate responsibility mandated by Chinese environmental laws and regulations. Specifically, it adheres to the precautionary principle, which requires proactive measures to prevent environmental harm. By stopping the activity, the company demonstrates a commitment to compliance and minimizes further potential damage. The subsequent investigation and corrective actions are crucial for preventing recurrence and ensuring long-term environmental sustainability, thereby upholding the company's reputation and avoiding potential legal penalties. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to continue the activity while initiating a review, arguing that project timelines are critical. This approach fails to acknowledge the immediate environmental risk and prioritizes commercial expediency over regulatory compliance. It violates the principle of polluter pays and could lead to significant environmental damage, resulting in substantial fines, project delays due to remediation, and reputational damage. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of environmental protection laws that demand immediate cessation of harmful activities. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay the audit findings and implement only superficial corrective measures without a thorough investigation. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to genuine environmental protection and a potential attempt to circumvent regulatory scrutiny. Such an approach is ethically unsound and legally risky, as it suggests a pattern of non-compliance that could be uncovered by future audits or regulatory inspections, leading to severe penalties. It also fails to address the underlying systemic issues that led to the non-compliance. Third incorrect approach would be to blame the site personnel without investigating the systemic factors, such as inadequate training, insufficient resources, or unclear procedures. While individual accountability is important, focusing solely on blame without understanding the organizational context is insufficient. This approach fails to implement effective long-term solutions and can foster a culture of fear rather than a culture of compliance and continuous improvement, which is essential for sustainable environmental management. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must prioritize immediate compliance and risk mitigation by halting any activity that violates regulations. Second, they should initiate a comprehensive investigation to identify the root causes of the noncompliance, considering both individual actions and systemic factors. Third, they must develop and implement robust corrective and preventive actions, ensuring they are adequate to address the identified issues and prevent recurrence. Fourth, they should document all actions taken and communicate findings and resolutions to relevant stakeholders, including regulatory bodies if required. This systematic approach ensures that ethical obligations and legal requirements are met, while also fostering a culture of responsibility and continuous improvement within the organization. Question 12. Assessment of the most effective strategy for China state construction engineering to proactively manage the potential impact of escalating international trade disputes on its overseas infrastructure projects, considering the need for robust risk mitigation without compromising project timelines. Option A. Implement a dynamic risk monitoring system that continuously analyzes geopolitical trends and their potential impact on supply chains and material costs, coupled with the development of diversified sourcing strategies and pre-negotiated contingency clauses in contracts. Option B. Focus solely on optimizing on-site construction efficiency and cost control, assuming that international trade disputes are external factors beyond the company's direct influence and will resolve themselves over time. Option C. Reactively adjust project plans and material procurement only when trade disputes directly impact ongoing operations, prioritizing immediate problem solving over long-term risk anticipation. Option D. Rely exclusively on historical data from past international trade agreements to predict the duration and severity of current disputes, using this as the sole basis for any risk mitigation efforts. The correct answer is A. Implement a dynamic risk monitoring system that continuously analyzes geopolitical trends and their potential impact on supply chains and material costs, coupled with the development of diversified sourcing strategies and pre-negotiated contingency clauses in contracts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent uncertainty in predicting the impact of geopolitical shifts on large-scale construction projects. China State Construction Engineering operates in a global environment, making it susceptible to international relations and trade policies. A sudden imposition of sanctions or trade restrictions by a major trading partner could significantly disrupt supply chain, increase material costs, and even lead to project delays or cancellations. The challenge lies in proactively identifying these potential risks and developing robust mitigation strategies without succumbing to speculation or paralysis. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for preparedness with the practicalities of resource allocation and project planning. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and forward-looking risk assessment that considers a broad spectrum of potential geopolitical events and their plausible impacts on project execution. This aligns with best professional practice by emphasizing proactive identification and analysis of external threats. Specifically, within the context of Chinese regulatory frameworks governing state-owned enterprises and international business, there is an expectation of due diligence in managing risks that could affect national economic interests and project viability. This approach demonstrates a commitment to responsible project management, ensuring that potential disruptions are anticipated and contingency plans are developed, thereby safeguarding the company's assets and reputation. It reflects a mature understanding of the interconnectedness of global politics and business operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to dismiss geopolitical risks as unpredictable and therefore unmanageable, focusing solely on immediate operational concerns. This fails to meet the professional standard of comprehensive risk management expected under Chinese business regulations, which often mandate consideration of strategic and external factors. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to stakeholders who rely on prudent management to protect investments. Another incorrect approach would be to overreact to every minor geopolitical fluctuation, leading to constant, disruptive changes in project plans and resource allocation. While vigilance is necessary, such an approach lacks the analytical rigor to distinguish between significant threats and transient noise. This can result in inefficient resource utilization and a loss of focus on core project objectives, potentially violating principles of sound financial management and operational efficiency mandated by corporate governance guidelines. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on historical data without considering the evolving nature of international relations. Geopolitical landscapes are dynamic, and past patterns may not accurately predict future events. This approach would be deficient in its risk assessment methodology, failing to incorporate forward-looking analysis and scenario planning, which are crucial for effective risk mitigation in a rapidly changing global environment. It could lead to a false sense of security and leave the company vulnerable to unforeseen circumstances. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk assessment framework that includes 1. Environmental scanning. Continuously monitor geopolitical developments, trade policies, and international relations relevant to project locations and supply chains. 2. Impact analysis. Evaluate the potential consequences of identified risks on project timelines, budgets, resources, and contractual obligations. 3. Likelihood assessment. Determine the probability of each risk occurring. 4. Mitigation planning. Develop strategies to avoid, reduce, transfer, or accept identified risks. 5. Contingency planning. Establish fallback plans for critical risks that cannot be fully mitigated. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, proactive, and aligned with regulatory expectations for responsible corporate conduct. Question 13. Comparative studies suggest that in large-scale construction projects, the timely procurement of specialized materials is critical for maintaining project momentum and ensuring structural integrity. Imagine a scenario where a crucial shipment of high-strength rebar, specified for a critical load-bearing element of a major infrastructure project managed by China State Construction Engineering, is significantly delayed due to unforeseen logistical issues. The project team is under immense pressure to meet an upcoming milestone. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant response to this implementation challenge? Option A. Discreetly source the required rebar through informal channels to expedite delivery, bypassing official procurement procedures to meet the deadline. Option B. Halt all construction activities related to the affected structural element until the original specified rebar arrives, without investigating any potential mitigation strategies or alternative approved suppliers. Option C. Proceed with using a readily available but unverified alternative rebar from a local supplier to avoid further schedule slippage, assuming it is of comparable strength. Option D. Immediately escalate the delay to the project management and procurement departments, providing detailed documentation of the impact, and collaboratively explore approved alternative suppliers or expedited shipping options while adhering to all quality verification protocols. The correct answer is D. Immediately escalate the delay to the project management and procurement departments, providing detailed documentation of the impact, and collaboratively explore approved alternative suppliers or expedited shipping options while adhering to all quality verification protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale construction projects, particularly within the context of China State Construction Engineering's operations. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid project advancement with the imperative to adhere to stringent quality control and safety regulations. Delays in material procurement, especially for specialized components like high-strength rebar, can have cascading effects on the project timeline, budget, and ultimately, the structural integrity and safety of the final build. The pressure to meet deadlines, often driven by external stakeholders or contractual obligations, can create a temptation to compromise on established quality assurance processes. This requires a professional to exercise sound judgment, prioritizing long-term project success and public safety over short-term expediency. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and systematic response to the material delay. It involves immediately escalating the issue to relevant project management and procurement departments, providing clear documentation of the delay's impact, and collaboratively exploring alternative, approved suppliers or expedited shipping options. This aligns with the principles of robust project management and risk mitigation, which are implicitly expected under the regulatory framework governing construction in China. Adherence to established procurement protocols, even when facing delays, ensures that any deviation is properly vetted, documented, and approved, thereby maintaining accountability and transparency. This approach upholds the ethical responsibility to deliver a safe and compliant structure, prioritizing quality and safety over schedule pressures. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with construction using readily available, but potentially substandard, alternative materials without proper verification or approval. This directly violates quality control regulations and could compromise the structural integrity of the building, leading to potential safety hazards and significant legal liabilities. Demonstrates a failure to uphold professional responsibility and ethical standards by prioritizing speed over safety and compliance. Another incorrect approach is to simply halt all work until the original specified materials arrive, without exploring any mitigation strategies. While this avoids using substandard materials, it fails to demonstrate proactive problem-solving and efficient project management, could lead to unnecessary delays and increased costs, potentially breaching contractual obligations and reflecting poor professional judgment in managing unforeseen circumstances. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to bypass official procurement channels and source materials through informal networks to expedite delivery. This circumvents established quality assurance and due diligence processes, increasing the risk of receiving counterfeit or non-compliant materials. It also creates a lack of transparency and accountability, which is contrary to good governance and regulatory expectations. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such implementation challenges should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly identify and quantify the problem, including the specific material delay and its potential impact. Second, they should consult relevant project documentation, specification, and regulatory guidelines to understand the requirements and acceptable alternatives. Third, they should engage in open communication with all affected stakeholders, including project managers, procurement teams, and quality control personnel. Fourth, they should explore all feasible solutions, evaluating each based on its compliance with regulations, impact on quality and safety, cost-effectiveness, and timeline implications. Finally, they must document all decisions and actions taken, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout the process. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with professional and regulatory standards. Question 14. The assessment process reveals that during a timed technical assessment for a position at China State Construction Engineering, a candidate inadvertently accessed a section of the assessment platform containing proprietary project data that was not intended for their current assessment module. The candidate has not yet utilized this information in their responses. What is the most ethically and professionally appropriate course of action for the candidate? Option A. Continue with the assessment, attempting to incorporate any relevant insights gained from the proprietary data to demonstrate a deeper understanding of the company's operations. Option B. Immediately exit the assessment platform and contact the HR Department of China State Construction Engineering to report the security oversight without completing the assessment. Option C. Immediately cease working on the assessment and discreetly inform the assessment administrator of the accidental access to the proprietary data, requesting guidance on how to proceed. Option D. Ignore the proprietary data and continue with the assessment as if it were never seen, hoping that the accidental access goes unnoticed. The correct answer is C. Immediately cease working on the assessment and discreetly inform the assessment administrator of the accidental access to the proprietary data, requesting guidance on how to proceed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and confidentiality, particularly within the context of a competitive hiring process. The candidate's access to proprietary information, even if inadvertently obtained, creates a conflict of interest and a potential breach of trust. Navigating this requires a delicate balance between demonstrating competence and upholding ethical standards, as defined by the China State Construction Engineering Hiring Assessment Test Framework. The correct approach prioritizes transparency and adherence to ethical guidelines. By immediately disclosing the situation to the assessment administrator, the candidate demonstrates integrity and respect for the assessment process. This aligns with the principles of fair play and prevents any perception of unfair advantage, which is crucial in maintaining the credibility of the hiring assessment. This proactive disclosure is the most professional and ethically sound response, safeguarding both the candidate's reputation and the integrity of the assessment. Incorrect approaches fail to address the core ethical dilemma. One incorrect approach might involve attempting to use the information without disclosure, which constitutes a direct violation of ethical conduct and could lead to disqualification and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach could be to ignore the information and proceed as if it were not seen, which, while seemingly neutral, fails to acknowledge the ethical responsibility to report potential breaches of confidentiality or unfair advantages. This passive approach can still be interpreted as a lack of integrity or an unwillingness to address difficult ethical situations. A further incorrect approach might be to discuss the information with others, which exacerbates the breach of confidentiality and could lead to wider ethical and legal ramifications. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Immediate self-assessment of the ethical implications. 2. Prioritizing transparency and honesty. 3. Proactively communicating the issue to the relevant authority, in this case, the assessment administrator. 4. Seeking guidance on how to proceed ethically. This framework ensures that professional conduct remains paramount, even when faced with unexpected and potentially compromising circumstances. Question 15. To address the challenge of a critical infrastructure project nearing completion where a minor deviation from approved structural specifications has been identified, what is the most appropriate course of action for the project management team to ensure compliance with China's regulatory framework while minimizing undue project disruption? Option A. Proceed with construction as planned, assuming the deviation is minor and will not affect the project's overall safety or performance. Option B. Implement a cosmetic fix for the deviation without informing or seeking approval from the relevant supervisory bodies. Option C. Conduct a thorough technical assessment of the deviation's impact on structural integrity and safety. Consult with relevant authorities and stakeholders, and propose a compliant solution based on the findings. Option D. Immediately halt all construction activities and initiate a complete redesign and reapproval process for the affected section of the project. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough technical assessment of the deviation's impact on structural integrity and safety, consult with relevant authorities and stakeholders, and propose a compliant solution based on the findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential conflict between project expediency and adherence to China's regulatory framework governing construction project quality and safety. Pressure to accelerate a critical infrastructure project, coupled with the discovery of a minor deviation from approved specifications, requires a nuanced judgment call. Failing to address the deviation could lead to future structural integrity issues, reputational damage, and significant legal repercussions under Chinese construction law. Conversely, halting the project for a full redesign and reapproval process could incur substantial delays and cost overruns, impacting national development goals. The core challenge lies in balancing the immediate demands of the project timeline with the long-term imperative of regulatory compliance and public safety. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough technical assessment of the deviation's impact on structural integrity and safety, followed by consultation with relevant authorities and stakeholders. This aligns with the principles of China's construction law and related quality control regulations, which mandate that construction must strictly adhere to approved designs and standards. The law emphasizes the responsibility of the construction entity to ensure quality and safety. By investigating the deviation's actual impact, seeking expert opinions, and engaging in transparent communication with regulatory bodies, the project team demonstrates a commitment to responsible engineering and compliance. This proactive and evidence-based approach allows for informed decision-making, potentially leading to a minor modification approval or a targeted remediation plan, rather than outright halt, while upholding the spirit and letter of the law. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to ignore the deviation and proceed with construction, assuming it is minor and inconsequential. This directly violates Article 49 of China's construction law, which states that construction must be carried out in accordance with the approved design documents. Such an action constitutes a serious breach of quality control regulations and could lead to severe penalties, including fines, suspension of operations, and personal liability for responsible individuals if defects are discovered later. Another incorrect approach is to immediately halt all work and demand a complete redesign and reapproval without first assessing the deviation's actual impact. While seemingly cautious, this approach may be overly disruptive and economically damaging if the deviation poses no significant risk. It fails to leverage engineering expertise to determine the necessity of such drastic measures and could be seen as an inefficient application of resources, potentially contravening the spirit of promoting efficient project delivery within regulatory bounds. A third incorrect approach is to unilaterally implement a cosmetic fix without informing or seeking approval from the relevant supervisory bodies. This bypasses the established regulatory oversight mechanisms designed to ensure construction quality and safety. It is a violation of the principles of transparency and accountability enshrined in Chinese construction regulations, which require reporting and approval for any deviations from approved plans, regardless of perceived minor impact. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly identify the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the situation, referencing China's construction law, building codes, and quality standards. Second, they should gather all relevant technical data and expert opinions to objectively assess the deviation's impact. Third, they must engage in open and honest communication with all stakeholders, including the client, supervisory authorities, and design teams. Fourth, they should explore all viable solutions that balance project objectives with regulatory compliance, prioritizing safety and quality. Finally, they must document all decisions and actions meticulously, ensuring a clear audit trail. Question 16. Market research demonstrates that a key supplier for a critical infrastructure project managed by China State Construction Engineering is experiencing severe financial difficulties, potentially jeopardizing their ability to deliver essential components on time and to specification. What is the most prudent course of action for the project manager? Option A. Offer direct financial aid to the supplier to help them overcome their difficulties without conducting a detailed financial review of their situation. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence assessment of the supplier's financial health, explore potential mitigation strategies with the supplier, and simultaneously evaluate alternative suppliers and the associated risks and costs of switching. Option C. Immediately terminate the contract with the financially distressed supplier and initiate an urgent search for a replacement to avoid any potential project delays. Option D. Continue with the current supplier without any immediate action, assuming the situation will resolve itself, and focus on other project management tasks. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence assessment of the supplier's financial health, explore potential mitigation strategies with the supplier, and simultaneously evaluate alternative suppliers and the associated risks and costs of switching. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in project management where a critical supplier faces unforeseen financial difficulties. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to secure project continuity against the potential long-term risks associated with a financially unstable partner. China State Construction Engineering, CC, operates within a regulatory environment that emphasizes robust risk management, adherence to contractual obligations, and ethical business conduct. A hasty decision without proper due diligence could lead to significant financial losses, project delays, reputational damage, and potential violations of procurement regulations or internal CC policies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, risk-based decision-making process aligned with CC internal governance and relevant Chinese regulations concerning contract management and supplier relations. This approach prioritizes thorough due diligence, including a detailed financial assessment of the supplier, an evaluation of alternative suppliers, and a comprehensive risk analysis of continuing with the current supplier versus seeking a new one. It also necessitates transparent communication with stakeholders and adherence to contractual clauses regarding supplier default or financial distress. This aligns with the principles of prudent financial management and responsible procurement expected of a major state-owned enterprise like CC, ensuring decisions are informed, justifiable, and minimize exposure to undue risk. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately terminating the contract and seeking a new supplier without a thorough assessment. This could lead to significant disruption, higher costs due to expedited sourcing, and potential legal disputes with the existing supplier if contract termination clauses are not met. It bypasses the due diligence required by CC internal risk management framework and potentially Chinese contract law, which often encourages good faith negotiation and resolution before outright termination. Another incorrect approach is to continue with the supplier without any intervention, hoping the situation resolves itself. This is a failure of proactive risk management. It exposes CC to the risk of project stoppage if the supplier defaults completely, leading to severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and potential breaches of project timelines. This passive stance ignores the fiduciary duty to protect CC assets and project interests, and could be seen as a dereliction of duty under internal CC policies and general business ethics. A third incorrect approach is to offer financial assistance to the supplier without a clear understanding of the supplier's underlying financial issues or a structured repayment plan. This could result in CC absorbing the supplier's financial problems, leading to significant unrecoverable losses. It lacks the rigor of a financial due diligence process and deviates from standard procurement practices that require clear contractual terms and risk mitigation strategies, potentially violating financial control regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making framework. This typically involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the issue supplier's financial distress. 2. Information gathering. Collect all relevant data supplier's financial statements, contract terms, market alternatives. 3. Option generation. Brainstorm potential courses of action, continue, renegotiate, terminate, assist. 4. Option evaluation. Analyze each option against criteria such as cost, time, risk, and regulatory compliance. 5. Decision making. Select the best option based on the evaluation. 6. Implementation. Execute the chosen course of action. 7. monitoring and review, track the outcome and adjust as necessary. This systematic process ensures that decisions are well-reasoned, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 17. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of exceeding the allocated budget for the procurement of specialized construction materials on a key infrastructure project. The project manager is under pressure to address this deviation promptly. Which of the following actions represents the most prudent and professionally responsible approach? Option A. Instruct the site engineers to substitute the specified specialized materials with more readily available and cheaper alternatives without consulting the design team or project engineers. Option B. Implement a blanket reduction in the quantity of all construction materials ordered for the remainder of the project to offset the current overspending. Option C. Initiate an immediate review of the procurement process for these materials, engaging with suppliers to understand price fluctuations and exploring alternative, cost-effective sourcing options while ensuring quality standards are maintained. Option D. Defer any action until the end of the project, assuming the overall project budget will absorb the excess material costs. The correct answer is C. Initiate an immediate review of the procurement process for these materials, engaging with suppliers to understand price fluctuations and exploring alternative, cost-effective sourcing options while ensuring quality standards are maintained. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in project management, where initial performance indicators suggest a deviation from planned outcomes. The professional challenge lies in interpreting these metrics accurately, understanding their root causes, and selecting an appropriate course of action that aligns with project objectives, stakeholder expectations, and regulatory compliance within the context of China state construction engineering. The need for a structured decision-making framework is paramount to avoid reactive, potentially detrimental choices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation into the underlying reasons for the performance deviation. This aligns with best professional practice by emphasizing data-driven decision-making and a proactive problem-solving methodology. Within the framework of China State Construction Engineering's operational guidelines and relevant Chinese construction regulations, this approach ensures that any corrective actions are well-informed, targeted, and minimize risks to project timelines, budget, and quality. It reflects a commitment to continuous improvement and adherence to established project management principles, which are implicitly or explicitly supported by the company's internal policies and national standards for construction project oversight. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately implement drastic cost-cutting measures without a thorough understanding of the performance metrics' origins. This could lead to compromising material quality, reducing essential safety protocols, or impacting the long-term durability of the construction, all of which would violate national construction quality standards and potentially lead to legal repercussions and reputational damage for China state construction engineering. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are temporary fluctuations. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to adhere to the principles of proactive project management. Such inaction could allow minor issues to escalate into significant problems, leading to substantial cost overruns, project delays, and potential safety hazards, contravening the company's responsibility for diligent project supervision as outlined in its operational mandates and relevant Chinese construction laws. A third incorrect approach would be to solely blame the on-site team without conducting an objective review of all contributing factors, including design issues, supply chain disruptions, or external environmental conditions. This demonstrates poor leadership and a failure to apply a fair and comprehensive decision-making process, potentially leading to demotivation and a breakdown in team cohesion, which indirectly impacts project performance and violates principles of fair management practices expected within a large state-owned enterprise like China State Construction Engineering. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive analysis of the situation. This involves 1. Data gathering and verification, ensuring the performance metrics are accurate and complete. 2. Root cause analysis, identifying the fundamental reasons behind the observed deviations. 3. Option generation, brainstorming potential solutions based on the root causes. 4. Impact assessment, evaluating the potential consequences of each option on project objectives, budget, schedule, quality, safety, and regulatory compliance. 5. Decision and implementation, selecting the most appropriate solution and developing a clear implementation plan. 6. Monitoring and review, continuously tracking the effectiveness of the implemented solution and making adjustments as needed. This systematic process ensures that decisions are rational, justifiable, and aligned with professional standards and regulatory requirements. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals significant delays in material procurement and a higher than expected rate of minor rework on a major infrastructure project. The project manager is under pressure to accelerate the timeline and reduce immediate costs. Which of the following approaches best addresses these findings while adhering to professional standards and regulatory expectations for construction projects in China? Option A. Focus solely on increasing labor output through overtime without investigating the underlying causes of delays and rework. Option B. Prioritize meeting the accelerated timeline by deferring non-critical quality checks and addressing rework only if it becomes a major issue. Option C. Immediately implement a blanket cost reduction strategy by reducing inspection frequencies and sourcing cheaper, alternative materials to expedite progress. Option D. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of procurement delays and rework. Develop targeted corrective actions based on risk assessment, and implement these changes through a formal change management process with stakeholder consultation. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of procurement delays and rework, develop targeted corrective actions based on risk assessment, and implement these changes through a formal change management process with stakeholder consultation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale construction projects, balancing the need for rapid progress with adherence to quality and safety standards, particularly when faced with external pressures like tight deadlines and budget constraints. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks that could compromise project integrity and long-term viability, while also satisfying immediate stakeholder demands. The pressure to expedite can lead to shortcuts, which in turn can result in significant financial, reputational, and legal repercussions for China state construction engineering. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic, risk-based methodology for addressing the identified inefficiencies. This involves a thorough root cause analysis to understand why the inefficiencies exist, rather than just observing their symptoms. Implementing corrective actions that are proportionate to the identified risks and aligned with established quality management systems, e.g., ISO 9001 principles, which are widely adopted in the construction industry and often mandated by project contracts, ensures that improvements are sustainable and do not compromise project standards. This approach prioritizes proactive problem-solving, stakeholder communication, and continuous improvement, which are core tenets of effective project management and regulatory compliance in the construction sector. It reflects a commitment to delivering a project that meets all contractual obligations, safety regulations, and quality benchmarks, thereby safeguarding the company's reputation and minimizing potential liabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on immediate cost-cutting without a comprehensive risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the elimination of essential quality control measures or safety protocols, directly violating construction safety regulations and quality assurance standards. Such actions would expose the company to significant legal liabilities, potential project delays due to rework, and severe reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to implement changes without proper documentation or stakeholder consultation. In construction, transparency and accountability are paramount. Failing to document changes or consult with relevant parties, e.g., engineering teams, site supervisors, clients, can lead to misunderstandings, disputes, and non-compliance with contractual requirements and potentially local building codes or environmental regulations. This lack of due diligence can result in project disputes and legal challenges. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness in addressing inefficiencies, perhaps by implementing superficial fixes, is also professionally unsound. This fails to address the underlying systemic issues, leading to recurring problems and a continued risk of non-compliance with quality and safety standards. It demonstrates a lack of commitment to best practices and can result in ongoing operational inefficiencies and potential breaches of regulatory requirements related to project execution and maintenance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the problem and its potential impact. This involves gathering data, performing root cause analysis, and evaluating potential solutions against established project objectives, contractual obligations, and regulatory requirements. Risk assessment is a critical component, ensuring that proposed solutions do not introduce new or exacerbate existing risks. Stakeholder engagement and clear communication are vital throughout the process to ensure buy-in and alignment. Finally, a commitment to monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of implemented solutions is essential for continuous improvement and long-term project success. Question 19. Consider a scenario where during a site visit for a major infrastructure project bid, a member of your team overhears a conversation between representatives of a competitor that reveals a key aspect of their proposed pricing strategy. This information, if acted upon, could significantly influence your company's bidding decision. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for your team? Option A. Acknowledge the overheard information but decide not to act on it, continuing with the original bid strategy without reporting the incident, as no direct action was taken. Option B. Discreetly incorporate the competitor's pricing strategy insight into your own bid to ensure competitiveness, rationalizing that such information is part of the competitive landscape. Option C. Inform your team members about the overheard information and collectively decide whether or not to use it to adjust the bid, considering it as valuable market intelligence. Option D. Immediately cease any further engagement with the overheard information and report the incident to your project lead or ethics department for guidance on how to proceed, ensuring no attempt is made to leverage this information in the bid. Correct answer is D. Immediately cease any further engagement with the overheard information and report the incident to your project lead or ethics department for guidance on how to proceed, ensuring no attempt is made to leverage this information in the bid. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain confidentiality and avoid conflicts of interest, particularly within the context of a competitive bidding process for a significant construction project. The pressure to leverage insider information for personal or company gain, even if seemingly minor, can lead to severe reputational damage and legal repercussions. Navigating this requires a strong understanding of professional conduct guidelines and a commitment to integrity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates adherence to the principles of fair competition and professional integrity as expected within the Chinese construction industry and by China State Construction Engineering. It prioritizes ethical conduct by refusing to exploit privileged information. This aligns with the spirit of fair play and prevents the creation of an unfair advantage, which could undermine the integrity of the bidding process and the company's reputation. It upholds the trust placed in the company by all stakeholders, including clients and competitors. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves using the overheard information to subtly adjust the bid. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and an attempt to gain an unfair advantage. It violates the ethical principle of fair competition and could be interpreted as corporate espionage or insider trading within the context of the bidding process, leading to disqualification and potential legal action. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the information, but to remain silent about its acquisition. While not actively using the information, this passive acceptance of potentially compromising knowledge without reporting it can still be problematic. It fails to uphold the proactive ethical responsibility to ensure the integrity of the process. If the information were to surface later, the company could be implicated for not acting transparently. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the information as irrelevant and proceed with the bid, as originally planned without any internal review. This overlooks the potential for even seemingly minor information to influence decision-making or to be perceived as an attempt to gain an advantage. It lacks the due diligence expected in sensitive situations and could be seen as a failure to adequately assess and mitigate risks related to ethical conduct. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should adopt a framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and transparency. This involves 1. recognizing the sensitive nature of overheard information during a competitive process. 2. Immediately ceasing any engagement with the information to avoid further compromise. 3. Reporting the incident internally to a supervisor or ethics officer to ensure proper handling and documentation. 4. Refraining from any action that could be construed as exploiting the information, even indirectly. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are made with integrity, in compliance with professional standards, and with a view to protecting the company's reputation and legal standing. Question 20. The investigation demonstrates that a significant delay in the handover of project documentation has been identified as a recurring issue impacting subsequent project phases. The project management team is tasked with proposing solutions to streamline this process. Which of the following approaches would best address this issue while adhering to principles of effective process optimization within a large construction engineering firm? Option A. Adopt a standardized checklist for document submission based on a successful process observed in a different, unrelated industry. Option B. Conduct a series of workshops where team members share their personal experiences and suggest immediate ad hoc changes to the current documentation workflow. Option C. Rely on informal communication channels and personal assurances from team members to expedite document submission and review. Option D. Implement a new digital document management system and mandate its use for all project documentation, providing comprehensive training to all relevant personnel. Correct answer is D. Implement a new digital document management system and mandate its use for all project documentation, providing comprehensive training to all relevant personnel. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficiency with the long-term implications of process changes, particularly within the context of China State Construction Engineering's operational framework. The core of the challenge lies in identifying and implementing process optimizations that are not only effective, but also compliant with internal policies and potentially relevant national guidelines for construction project management and quality control, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam's limited scope. Careful judgment is required to avoid superficial changes that might offer short-term gains, but compromise quality, safety, or regulatory adherence. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it emphasizes a systematic, data-driven, and collaborative method for process optimization. This involves thorough analysis of existing workflows, identification of bottlenecks through objective metrics, and the development of solutions that are tested and validated before full implementation. This aligns with principles of continuous improvement and risk management, ensuring that changes are sustainable and contribute positively to project outcomes and organizational efficiency. While specific regulations for process optimization within China State Construction Engineering are not provided, the general expectation in professional engineering and construction is to follow established best practices that promote quality and efficiency, which this approach embodies. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals without empirical validation is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the necessary due diligence and can lead to the implementation of flawed processes that might even introduce new inefficiencies or risks. Such an approach fails to adhere to the implicit professional standard of evidence-based decision-making. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thoroughness and stakeholder consultation is also professionally unsound. Rushing through the optimization process without adequate planning, testing, or buy-in from affected teams can result in resistance, errors, and ultimately, a failure to achieve the desired improvements. This demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and a disregard for the human element in process change. A third incorrect approach that involves adopting a process solely because it has been successful in a different company or industry, without considering the unique context and specific requirements of China State Construction Engineering, is also problematic. This copy-paste mentality ignores the critical need for adaptation and integration, potentially leading to a process that is ill-suited to the organization's culture, resources, and project types. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Defining the problem or opportunity for optimization clearly. 2. Gathering comprehensive data on the current process, including performance metrics and stakeholder feedback. 3. Analyzing the data to identify root causes of inefficiencies or areas for improvement. 4. Brainstorming potential solutions, considering various optimization strategies. 5. Evaluating the feasibility, impact, and risks of each proposed solution. 6. Selecting the most promising solution, S, and developing a detailed implementation plan. 7. Piloting the optimized process to test its effectiveness and make necessary adjustments. 8. Implementing the refined process across the relevant areas, ensuring adequate training and support. 9. Monitoring the performance of the new process and continuing to seek further improvements.